Good afternoon, everyone. Some of you know me, and for those who don't, I am Sharon Birch, a spokesperson for the President of the 79th session of the UN General Assembly, His Excellency Philemon Yang. Thanks for joining this briefing, which is expected to be the first of a number of briefings that the Office of the President of the General Assembly is hoping to organize in the coming months, where we'll provide a snapshot of the immense work member states are doing on issues of great relevance. The briefing today will focus on the negotiations that member states are engaging in at the GA on the reform of the UN Security Council. They are technically referred to as the intergovernmental negotiations on the question of equitable representation on and increase in membership of the Security Council and other matters related to the Security Council. In short, we refer to them as the IGN. While the General Assembly began intergovernmental negotiations in 2008, the Pact for the Future, adopted in September 2024, encourages member states to strengthen efforts to work in the framework of this process as a matter of priority and without delay. It is therefore my pleasure to introduce His Excellency, Mr. Tareq Albanai, the permanent representative of the State of Kuwait to the UN, and also the chair of the intergovernmental negotiations on the reform of the Security Council. He will brief you on the status of these negotiations. After his remarks, we will open the floor to questions. Excellency, you have the floor. No, it's fine.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. And I apologize, we should have done this outside. It's a beautiful day today. So, as chair of the Intergovernmental Negotiations, the IGN, on Security Council reform, I'm pleased to provide an update on the progress made during the current session and highlight some recent developments that continue to shape and advance this critical process. The Pact of the Future recognized the centrality of a reformed Security Council in strengthening multilateralism and restoring trust in global governance. Notably, the Pact includes the most progressive and concrete commitment to Security Council reform since the 1960s. It aims to enhance the Council's effectiveness and representativeness, with a particular emphasis on addressing the historical injustice against Africa. The section of Security Council reform within the Pact outlines three key actions. The first action addresses areas of convergence and parameters for reform, such as improving the representation of underrepresented and unrepresented regions and groups, including Asia-Pacific, Latin America, and the Caribbean. It also calls for intensified efforts to find agreement on the issue of categories of membership. The second action focuses on the IGN process itself, encouraging the submission of additional models with a view toward developing a consolidated model in the future. The third action proposes interim concrete measures to enhance the Council's capacity to maintain international peace and security in the meantime, including the full implementation and adherence of Article 27.3 and all provisions of the UN Charter as they relate to decision-making processes in the Council. We are encouraged by the momentum shown by member states in this session. Liechtenstein has submitted a revised model showing flexibility and openness to refining proposals in light of ongoing dialogue. Additionally, CARICOM has submitted a model that will be presented and discussed at our next IGN meeting on 28 and 29 May. These contributions help enrich our discussions and bring us closer to areas of convergence. I encourage all member states and negotiating groups to put forward new proposals or update to existing ones. The spirit of reform requires both courage and creativity, and the active engagement of all delegations remains essential as we work to find consensus on core elements of Security Council reform. In parallel, the IGN has seen the implementation of new practical tools to improve transparency and accessibility. The webcasting of IGN meetings, which began during the 77th session, continues to expand access to our work, enabling not only member states but also academics and civil society to engage more deeply with the process. Moreover, the online repository has become an important resource, supporting member states' preparations and fostering more informed, substantive discussions. These procedural improvements are not minor. They are a direct response to long-standing calls for increased openness and reflect our collective commitment to moving the negotiations forward in a more inclusive and structured manner. On the bilateral level, I recently had the opportunity to visit Tokyo, where I held productive discussions with senior officials at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, including with His Excellency Yoko Kamikawa, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Japan's steadfast support for multilateralism and Security Council reform was reaffirmed, and I appreciated their ongoing commitment to an inclusive, member state-driven process. I look forward to continuing similar discussions in other capitals this year. In closing, while the road to reform is undeniably complex, we are taking steady and meaningful steps toward the path forward, with continued constructive engagement, growing convergences around principles of transparency, inclusivity, and accountability, and the momentum generated by the Pact for the Future. I remain hopeful that this session can lay the groundwork for a real and lasting progress. Let us remember, aside from an increase in the number of elected members in 1965, the first iteration of the Security Council has lasted over 80 years. Whatever formulation the Reformed Council takes, it must be designed to endure for the next century, anchored in the principles of inclusivity, transparency, efficiency, effectiveness, democracy, and accountability. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency. We will now open the floor to questions. Please be kindly reminded to provide your name and media organization. We'll take a few questions in the room and then online. Edie, please first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. As someone who's watched this process for well over 2 decades, you just said you're hopeful that this can lay the groundwork for something more serious, and you see this as the most serious commitment since the 1960s. How hopeful are you that by the SDGs 2030, we might actually see actual reform take place?
First of all, you need no introduction, so thank you for the first question. Secondly, I am extremely hopeful. I think the Pact of the Future gave us a momentum. At the highest level, our heads of states and government put forth a path forward. Now, if I were to say we can finish this in a year, I would be misleading you. But 2030, 6 years, 5 years from now, it's a realistic target. And we should, all of us, I think, want this to be done as soon as possible. But realistically speaking, this process, as it lays the ground for a council that will be effective for the next 100 years, needs to be carefully considered and needs to be consensus-based and needs to be agreed upon by the vast majority of member states. Because the way forward determines how this organization continues to deal with the maintenance of international peace and security, and especially the Security Council.
Thank you, Yoshito. Go ahead.
Thank you, Sharon. Ambassador Yoshita Singh with Press Trust of India, thank you for the briefing. There's been talk in the pact and otherwise also of how the council needs to be effective for the 21st century, more representative. We've heard all of that. But a council that does not include a country like India, the G4 countries sitting as a permanent member on the council, how does it make it representative and effective? So what are your thoughts on what's needed to be ensured that the reform that it takes place has countries like India sitting there permanently, because that will truly make the council more effective and representative and helping solve the problems that the worlds are facing right now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I had the pleasure last year, as I did this with my distinguished co-chair, Axel Marchik, to actually visit India and have a conversation there at the highest level. And the goal of this reformed council must be representative. And obviously India is a main player on the world stage today, but it is a membership of 193 countries, right? And the consideration is representative for everybody and the whole membership of the United Nations. So surely if the decision is made that the expansion of the council goes to from anywhere from 21 to 27 members, then surely India will be a contender in that and will be subject to the decision of the wider membership.
Thank you. Ahmed, please go ahead.
Thank you. Ahmed Fathi, ATN News. It's just a coincidence that my first year at the United Nations was in 2011, and the first meetings that I covered was the Security Council reform. And here we are in 2025, and we're still talking about Security Council reform. Based on what we've been hearing over the years and after the Pact of the Future, the vision is how I see it at least, is that the Security Council is, instead of being a two-tier organ, it's going to be a class-based system. You have first-class countries, second-class countries, third-class countries, and fourth-class countries, which is permanent 5, new permanent members, new the original 10 that they will be elected, plus new 5 countries. This is a little bit perplexing, but how can we navigate all of this? And again, based on what we hear, where it is the devil is in the details. When they say, okay, we're going to give Africa 2 to 3 seats. Okay, which countries in Africa? Is it South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, Morocco, even Algeria? Are they the ones who are going to be there? And on what criteria? Since you already, Africa have 3 seats. And one every 2 years that the Arab group gets 1 seat, and then Asia Pacific gets another seat. And it's been proving functional. Don't we need to have methods of work of the Security Council be looked at instead of expanding? For example, can a permanent member invade another country one day, and the following day veto the resolution that condemns the invasion of this country? Do we have a system like the judicial system where countries can be, because of conflict of interest, can recuse themselves, or their voting will be voided on this particular issue or conflict that they are party to? This is just one of many remarks. We have already problem with reaching consensus with the 15. How about when we have 21 or 26? How bad it's going to be, and how stagnant the council is going to be. Thank you for your patience, and I look forward to your reply.
I mean, it's a very legitimate question. I want to assure you that working methods is part and parcel of what we are discussing within the context of the IGN. In any organization, the working methods determine the outcomes and the way the situations are handled. Now, has there been deficiencies in the working methods? Apparently so, because we have seen situations that don't work. But that is why, and with the complexity of your question in and of itself, That is why this process has been painstakingly long. We all want to see Security Council reform happen today rather than tomorrow. However, the questions at hand and the necessity to thoroughly discuss them and deal with them for the future of this organization requires a real comprehensive consideration to allow for situations like this not to happen, or to be able to handle them in a way that satisfies basically the aspirations of the international community represented by member states in this organization.
After Desi, we will go online and then circle back to the room. Desi, please go ahead.
Hi, Ambassador Shudaji with China Central Television. Let me ask you some more practical questions because we don't really have that big expectation, frankly speaking. For your chairmanship during this year, what concrete ground do you want to lay down for the future reform for the Security Council? Can you give us some examples? What do you want to see happening during your chair? And also, we know that there's UN-80 initiative. How would this process be in line with the initiative itself? Thank you.
Well, the UN-80 initiative, I'll take that in the beginning, is not necessarily related to the IGN process. However, the 80th anniversary of this organization is an opportunity for all of us to double down on multilateralism and the importance of this organization and the importance of the work that it does all around the world. Now, on concrete results, the main goal of the IGN is to narrow down what we can converge on, add convergences by member states on issues that we are discussing. We discuss 5 clusters of issues. And every year, if we can move closer to convergences and minimize divergences, that is a plus, right? We, in the Pact of the Future, discussed the introduction of models, right, as a structured dialogue to get out of, looking at paperwork and hearing speeches. A model discussion allowed member states to discuss what the vision of a single group or a single state sees the future of the Security Council to be. And we're encouraging all groups and member states to introduce further models. So if we can get more models this year presented, that in and of itself is a step forward.
But wouldn't that be even more complicated for people to choose in models?
Not at all. The idea is to learn from these model discussions. We have seen already countries introduce models, and some of the ideas in the context of that specific model has been adopted by other groups or countries and incorporated into their own model. And this way of looking at it, outside the traditional cluster discussion or a speech, allows for this discussion, allows for member states to either positively react to some aspects of the model or pinpoint deficiencies in a model. And the best of us learn from this experience and come back with a renewed, more ambitious model that takes into account the comments by member states.
So now, thank you. We will now go online for a few questions. We just ask those online to be as clear as possible. If Takar, I believe you have a question, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Thank you, Ambassador. I have also been covering IGN process since 2009. But I see divisions all the time. The positions are frozen. But one thing everybody agrees is that the Security Council should be expanded. Is there any decision, Ambassador, on by how many members the Security Council should be expanded?
Thank you very much for your question. There's no decision yet, but the range of numbers that we have heard is between 21 and 27 member states in a possible expansion of the Security Council.
Any other questions online?
Can I have a follow-up?
Yeah, Sharon, I have one.
Sure, please.
Yes, Ambassador. So you gave us a timeline of about 2030 as a realistic figure to reach Security Council reforms. But the world is in flux and everything is changing rapidly. What guarantees do we have that the UN as a system will be there by 2030? You know, the world is changing so fast and so rapidly. So 2030 seems 5 years away. And with the geopolitical situation in flux, how are you positing that 5 years down the road will be at reforms? Because we're hearing this for years now. It started in 2008, the IGN process, and down the decades, so we are still where we were. There are no text-based negotiations as of yet. So could you elaborate a bit on that? And again, following Deji's question, what are the concrete, rules or concrete visions that you have for your leadership of the IGN?
Thank you for your question. I think the world understands that the United Nations is indispensable. And do I believe it'll be here in 2030? Yes, I do believe it's going to be here in 2030. And I think it'll be stronger, more nimble, and more effective in mandating its duty because of this, simply because of the processes that we are all considering as member states: GA revitalization, Security Council reform, and others that allow the UN to adapt to the times that we live in. So yes, I do believe UN will be here, and 2030 is not a deadline in and of itself. It's a projection that it could be possible to see a reform by then, but it's no guarantee that we'll see it by then. So the reform process, like I said, is complex and requires patience, because whatever decisions we make, the process of amending the charter, if it requires amending the charter, is very complicated in and of itself. And the process needs to last with us for the next 100 years at least, so that it can adapt to every possibility that the United Nations and the world faces. So I'm hopeful that we can see Security Council reform as soon as possible, but I can't guarantee it by 2030 or any other year for that matter. So let's hope that this process continues on a positive trajectory, which it has been for the last few years. And again, I'm very positive about breaking down whatever barriers there are, because people are understanding that we need something different, and member states are understanding that this is the recourse of the world community to tackle all issues, including peace and security, development, and human rights. So we are all working together to make this a better United Nations, top down, from the Secretariat to member states, from academia, from stakeholders. Everybody has a stake in this organization and its success. And this Security Council reform process is a part and parcel of that. Second question, you said my personal visions vis-a-vis Security Council reform. I think the more we are able to converse openly in a structured dialogue without putting artificial deadlines or barriers for ourselves, and without pushing one direction or another, the more we listen to each other and the more we are able to move forward on the basis of consensual agreement.
Thank you. So if there are no more questions online, okay, so Akhilesh, one final question online, and then Chris, we will come to you.
Day before yesterday, Indian permanent representative at UN has been telling that text-based negotiations should start as early as possible. So can you tell me that what is the problem in beginning of the text-based negotiation? And I just want to ask that whether you have reached to some sort of consensus till now.
Thank you very much. Yes, India's position has always been to move towards text-based negotiations as soon as possible. Obviously, this process will lead us to text-based negotiations because I think that is the least complicated part of this process. The most complicated part is to have consent on what that text contains, and then putting it on paper is not really gonna be that difficult, to be honest with you. And do we have consensus? Yes, we have consensus on many issues regarding the 5 clusters assigned by Decision 62557. Many issues of convergence that we have been able to put together over all those many years. There are still some issues of contention, but we are working steadily and surely to make sure that we overcome those.
Thank you, Chris. So we'll go back to the room. Chris, please, with your question.
Thank you for that, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Chris Reyes with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Mr. Ambassador, President Biden was quite emphatic in his support for Security Council reforms in his last 2 addresses before the UNGA during High Level Week. President Trump, on the other hand, has been very critical of the United Nations. Do you see this having an impact or looming large over these negotiations over the next few years?
Well, to be honest, we haven't heard from the United States in the room with regards to their position or whether or not it has changed from the previous administration. But I'm sure the United States, as a permanent member of the Security Council, has a stake in this process and will be engaged as soon as they have a permanent representative here. And I look forward to that conversation.
Are there any other questions online?
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm very sorry. I made a mistake in pronouncing the name of His Excellency the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Japan. It is Takeshi Iwaya that I had met, and not the former Japanese foreign minister. So I apologize for that.
So thank you, everyone. We have come to the end of the briefing. We will keep you posted on any further briefings. Just one housekeeping note. President Yang will no longer be going on official travel to Morocco from the 19th to the 23rd of April, as stated in my briefing of Tuesday. We thank His Excellency for briefing us on this topic, and we thank everyone online and in person for joining us. We are wishing everyone a very nice long weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you for your question.